Hey, welcome to the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. It's a Sunday night, every Sunday from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern. We do this live. I want to talk to you tonight about what's wrong with the world. What's wrong with the world? This is going to be an essay that's an introductory essay to a couple of other things that I want to share with you. But I don't have to tell you that the world's in a mess. That's not the news. The great division today is over religion. It's your God, my God, no God. Why? Well, because our morals and our values are all drawn from religion. You see, without religion, every man does what's right in his own eyes. And the community, the state, the country is in moral and legal turmoil. Our economy, our form of government, the way we view other people, our purposes in life are all drawn from religion. And we think our religion is best. Some of us think ours is the only one. The one which brings the most hope and the value to all people. We believe that there's no other religion but ours that provides any kind of hope and stability. And we all need hope and stability. Now, if you go back far enough, you realize there was only one religious belief. It was the belief that Adam had in the garden. His view of the one who made the heavens and the earth, the one he spoke to, the one who met him in the cool of the evening for fellowship, that God. It didn't take very long. He decided that he wanted to keep Eve instead of staying with God. Thought he could probably have it both ways. Didn't work. And Adam's sons disagreed on his evaluation relative to God. Cain rose up to kill his brother. The brother who believed in the God who made the heavens and the earth. At least that's what the Bible implies. You see, the evidence is in what each man brought to God as a sacrifice. Abel brought an innocent blood sacrifice of a lamb. Cain brought fruits and vegetables, things he did, things that grew up from the dirt. Very human. The story rings true since this has been the pattern throughout all of human history. Those who reject the Bible's God continually to seek ways to marginalize and or do away with those who accept it. The descendants of Cain forged a society so evil that God was forced to destroy it with a flood. A flood that changed the topography and the geology of the earth. A flood that changed the climate and the natural systems, making it harder to survive, let alone succeed. The 7 souls who were saved from that flood began a new society in a new, more harsh environment. It only took a few generations before God was forced to disperse people, to separate them by language. We're talking about the Tower of Babel. And thus began the power struggles between nations. Egypt, Mesopotamia, which parts of Iran, Syria, and Turkey today, and the Indus Valley, civilizations in the northeast, Afghanistan to Pakistan to the northwest parts of India are the oldest known, dating back 3100 BC. Close behind are the Greeks at 2700 BC, the Mayans at 2600 BC, and the Chinese at 1600 BC. Now, the Bible doesn't mention most of these since they play no part in God's evolving socio-religious program, a program that revolves around men we call the patriarchs of Israel. Adam through Noah, and then a flood. Noah through Abram. From Abram was right after the Tower of Babel. Abram through his son Isaac. He had another son, older son. His name is Ishmael. He was born of an Egyptian, not the child of promise as God specified. And Ishmael does not feature prominently in the biblical narrative. Once Isaac returns with his wives, children, and property, we no longer hear about his brother Esau. But his descendants play a very large part in the future narrative. From Jacob will come the Messiah of God about some 2,000 years later. He will fulfill the ancient prophecies dating all the way back to Adam and Eve. These human beings who were cast out of the garden, a garden that was closed to them, that place of divine fellowship, gone. The earth being cursed, no longer producing the food they needed. Human beings now would have to work the land and if they wanted to eat. And God no longer communed with them as he did in the garden. They were alone with their sin and the knowledge it didn't have to be this way. And from this point onward, God showed his will, his purpose in the natural evolutions of society and religion. His specific instruction and or information would come later through the patriarchs and the prophets. We have it in our Bible. Civilization would disperse with the fall of Babylon. Babylon was man's attempt to reach God, a worship of God that was purely human. When God destroyed that, those people all fled to other parts of the planet. And they began to evolve independently, socially, religiously, in terms of language and the ways that they lived. And all of that separated men from one another, preventing any further attempts at what the Babylonian effort was all about. But the Babylonian effort did continue. The exhaustive record is largely contained in a 1916 book entitled The Two Babylons by Alexander Hislop. Here the author cites and or quotes from documents and publications dating back to the mid-1500s AD, citing from works throughout the 1600s and 1800s. His thesis? The ancients were aware, in a vague and convoluted way, they were aware of God's ultimate purpose and design. Their art, their religions, their philosophies all reflect it. Much of it is in shadow form, but it's there. Now, you and I have talked about this before, probably many times over the last 20 years. And I'm not going to wear you out now with a rehearsal of all the details. But it is well known and well documented that the pagan religions of this world reflect the divine program in their own pagan way. And it's not just simply the Greek or the Roman mythologies. The many doctrines and practices of the Roman Catholic Church reflect this pagan version as well. From the garments that are worn by the priests to sacraments to teachings, as do the many non-Christian religions of the world. The similarities in belief and practice are not just noteworthy, they are astounding. All that to say that human beings have not been simply going about the business of survival and invention these last 4,000 years. They've been worshiping. A few have worshiped the one true God of heaven. But the majority have been worshiping the God of this world, who, by the way, is not finished. Look around. The vast majority of people in our world today are not believers in the Lord Jesus Christ. They're not even believers in the one true God of heaven, the God of the Bible. They're not even church goers. The majority of people in this world are secularists, atheists, if not in their official creed, in their practice. Do you need a list? Think about the growing number of atheist churches today. Atheist churches. Think about abortion on demand. That is not a godly idea. Think of transgenderism, or Eastern meditation, or hypnosis. Hypnotic trances as a form of Christian expression. Being drunk in the Spirit. God's bartender. Speaking in tongues, which is nothing more than gibberish. And so much more. There is nothing in the Bible about abandoning your mind and your senses and your will to another anything, even if it's simply emptiness, in order that you might be close to God, that you might hear from God. That's not a Bible idea. It is an occultic idea. For all of these things spring from the occult, not from the Bible. But here we are. And what is all this? If it is not truly from the Bible that can be demonstrated with the laws of hermeneutics, laws of interpretation, not just something you create out of it, but the language and the grammar, and you can read it and say, everybody agrees that's what that sentence means. We're not talking about that. We're talking about everything but that. And everything but that is occultic, meaning it comes from the spirit world. It's the religion of Satan, clear and simple. He is against God. If it's not what God says, it's what he wants. It's what he says. If these things were being done in a tribal environment around a fire with drums, you'd say it was witchcraft. But if you do it in the church, well, it's holy. But there is another doctrine of Satan, which is more subtle and more popular. It's called Darwinian anthropology. The idea that human beings have gradually evolved from primordial soup, rising up through the ages by means of natural selection to become the complex beings we now know. Out of that has come all sorts of confusion, compounding and contradictory ideas. All of it is built around the idea that human beings are completely natural. They are native to this earth. They are therefore evolving upward, becoming ever more complex, more varied. That's the heart of the abortion mentality. The early fetus is no more human than a monkey or a dog. When we started with abortion, it was in the first trimester, and there were drawings made to show what that fetus looked like. And next to that were the fetuses of dogs and other kinds of animals, monkeys and so forth. And he said, in the beginning, everything's the same. That was in the 1960s and early 70s. We didn't have the technology we have today. We now know that's not true. But this is also the heart of the transgender debate. The idea that we've changed and that now we are becoming androgynous. a term coined in the 17th century whose ancestry includes man and woman, the andre or andro, and woman, the gune or the gyne, from the 14th, 15th centuries, dates back to the ancient Greek and the ancient Latin. It's not a new idea. Evolution is essentially metaphysical. It's a form of philosophy which explores the fundamental questions of being, existence, and reality. Sounds very much like religion. And metaphysics has two branches. It has cosmology, the study of origins, and it has ontology, the physical nature of being. Traditional metaphysics seeks to answer the questions in what is called a suitably abstract and fully general manner, meaning intellectual, spiritual, emotional opinion, rather than scientific fact. Because the reality is that the facts speak of God. And of course we can't have that. The majority of human beings have never wanted that. So we create an abstract. We create an intellectual substitute. But to date, nothing explains the origin of the universe, this planet, this species, except the Bible. The evolutionary hypothesis is merely intellectual theory. There's no science in it. He's, oh, come on, preacher, what do you know? You don't agree? Let me ask you the scientific question. Where in science do you have something coming from nothing? Science says that can't happen. Evolutionary theory says that's exactly what did happen. It starts with something. They don't know what it was. They don't know where that came from. It wasn't life. And they build an unscientific theory around it. The biblical narrative still stands out at least equally credible, and in most, if not many cases, suitably credible. It doesn't answer the question, where did God come from? But it doesn't have to. The concept belongs to another set of questions, well beyond our need to know and beyond our ability to comprehend. But science loves to say that they start with what is. Well, that's where the Bible starts. But the Bible is less scientifically satisfying until you get into the details. And then the science is central and dominant. You see, nothing we see, nothing we've been told by God violates anything we know about science. But science doesn't answer the most important question, and that's the question of why. The enemies of God know the importance of this debate. They've worked hard and long to create a narrative that discounts and demeans this biblical concept. And the animus they demonstrate is intense and very often demeaning. If there is a God, and if the universe is His doing, then these God deniers are really God haters. And they are in real trouble. We're going to continue this discussion under the topic evolutionary theory that gave us humanistic religion. Stay tuned.